She changed the locks, said the house was always theirs after I paid every cent. I held up the deed through the rain, hands shaking, heart racing. My parents just stared through the glass, smug. But it was my brother who stepped out of the shadows and said, "Nice try, Aaron, but we fixed your little trap." My things were already in a soggy box on the porch. 3 years of sacrifice, wiped out like I never existed. What they didn't know, I kept. Every receipt, every bank transfer, every signature. They changed the locks, but I changed the title, and I don't bluff. Let's see how they handle court. My name is Aaron Callahan, and I'm 45 years old. Every morning at 6, I review client portfolios in my home office, surrounded by the precise order of spreadsheets and financial projections. The house I grew up in and now own holds memories in every corner. From the stairs that creak on the 3rd step to Mom's stubborn wallpaper that still clings in patches. My retired parents, Richard and Marie Callahan, lived here for 40 years before their spending habits nearly cost them everything. I learned financial discipline from my mentor, Elaine Thompson, a sharp-minded real estate lawyer who taught me to document every transaction. Those careful records became my shield, tracking each mortgage payment I made to save my childhood home. My brother David, who manages a car dealership across town, always dismissed my concerns about our parents' money problems. But let me start from the beginning. I'd been paying the mortgage for 3 years straight. 36 consecutive payments that meant skipping vacations, brown bagging lunches, and trading my Audi for a sensible Civic. But you know what? Every single sacrifice felt worth it when I walked into the county clerk's office that morning to finalize the deed transfer. "That's quite a stack of documentation," the clerk said, eyeing my carefully organized folder. I'd brought everything: bank statements, transfer records, even the original promissory note I'd written up. "I like to be thorough," I told her. Ever since Elaine drilled that habit into me during my early career days, I'd never shown up to any financial meeting unprepared. The whole process took less than an hour. One signature after another, each stroke of the pen cementing my ownership of 1247 Maple Street, the house where I'd learned to ride a bike in the driveway, where Mom had marked my growing height on the kitchen door frame, where Dad had taught me to balance a checkbook at the dining room table. Though maybe I should have paid less attention to his financial advice, given how things turned out. That afternoon, I pulled into the driveway with grocery bags full of celebration dinner fixings, salmon steaks, fresh asparagus, that fancy wild rice Mom loves. The late April sun warmed my face as I worked my new key into the lock. My key, my house. The thought still felt strange, but in a good way. "I brought dinner," I called out, shouldering open the door. The familiar squeak of that 3rd step greeted me as I crossed the threshold. Some things never change, and honestly, I hoped they never would. Mom appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Oh, you didn't have to do that, honey." There was something in her eyes, relief, yes, but mixed with something that made my stomach twist slightly, something calculating. Dad shuffled in from his den, barely looking up from his phone. "Got all that paperwork nonsense sorted out?" he asked, as if we'd just been dealing with a routine bill payment instead of transferring their home of 4 decades into my name. "All done," I said, trying to keep my voice light as I set the groceries on the counter. "Everything's official now. You two don't have to worry about the mortgage anymore, or the credit card debt, or the home equity loan they'd taken out last year. I'd consolidated it all, restructured their mess into something manageable. While Mom started unpacking the groceries, I slipped into the home office, my old bedroom, and tucked the deed copy into my fireproof lockbox. Next to it, I placed my payment ledger, 3 years of transactions, each one meticulously recorded. Some might call it paranoid, but Elaine had taught me well. "Paper trails save careers," she used to say, and sometimes a whole lot more. I pulled out my phone and sent her a quick text. "It's done." Her reply came almost instantly. "Smart girl, now keep those records safe." Back in the kitchen, I started setting out plates while Mom seasoned the salmon. Through the window, cicadas were starting their evening chorus, a sound that always meant home to me. Dad had already retreated back to his den, probably to watch golf highlights. "This is going to be lovely," Mom said, but her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. It was the same closed-off expression she'd worn when I first proposed taking over the mortgage payments. As the kitchen filled with cooking smells, I made mental notes about weekend repairs. The gutters needed cleaning, and that loose shingle on the north side of the roof had to be fixed before the next rain. My house, my responsibility now. "I should head out," I said, after dinner was cleared away. "Early client meeting tomorrow." I grabbed my purse, feeling the weight of the new key in my pocket. "I'll be by this weekend to take care of some maintenance issues." Mom nodded, still wearing that strange smile. Dad called out a distracted goodbye from his den. A week later, I pulled up to the house with my SUV loaded with repair supplies and more groceries. Dark clouds hung low, threatening rain, but I figured I could at least get the gutters done before the weather turned. You know how spring storms can be in Ohio. 1 minute it's clear, the next you're watching your neighbor's recycling bin float down the street. I juggled the grocery bags and tried my key in the front door. It wouldn't turn. I tried again, slower this time, but the key just scraped uselessly against whatever was inside the lock. My heart did a funny little skip as I set down the bags and tried one more time. Nothing. The first fat raindrops started falling as I knocked on the door. "Mom? Dad? The key's not working," I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. Through the decorative glass panels, I could see movement inside. My parents appeared in the foyer, standing close together, their faces set in expressions I'd never seen before. "Mom?" I tried again, pressing my palm against the glass. "What's going on? Did you change the locks?" "The house has always been ours, Aaron," Mom said, her voice muffled through the door. "You were just helping us through a rough patch." I fumbled in my purse, pulled out the deed with hands that had started to shake. "No, look, we signed the papers last week. The house is in my name now. I have the deed right here." I held it up to the window, raindrops spattering the document. Mom shook her head slowly. "That was just a technicality, dear. You know we'd never really give up our home." "A technicality?" The word came out as a whisper. 3 years of payments. 3 years of sacrifices, 3 years of trust, all dismissed as a technicality. Movement in the hallway caught my eye. My brother Steve stepped out of the shadows, and my stomach clenched. He hadn't contributed a dime to saving this house, hadn't even visited when Mom and Dad were drowning in payment notices. "Nice scheme, sis," he sneered, moving closer to the door. "Get them to sign over the house when they're vulnerable. Then what? Kick them out? Sell it from under them?" "What? No!" The denial burst out of me. "Steve, you know that's not—" "We found your trap before you could spring it," he cut me off, jabbing a finger toward the porch. "Your stuff's in that box. Take it and go." I looked down. There it was, a battered cardboard box with "your things" scrawled across it in Steve's handwriting. My high school yearbooks, photo albums, the ceramic butterfly I'd made Mom in 3rd grade art class. The rain was coming down harder now, soaking through my light jacket. "Dad?" I tried one last time. "Please, just let me in so we can talk about this." He wouldn't meet my eyes, just stood there, one arm around Mom's shoulders, looking at some point over my head. I stumbled back to my car, rain mixing with what I refused to admit were tears. With shaking fingers, I pulled up the county clerk's number and hit dial. "Records office. This is Janet." "Hi, I need to verify a deed transfer from last week." I managed to get out. "For 1247 Maple Street?" There was a pause, then Janet's voice dropped lower. "Miss Callahan, I was hoping you'd call. Listen carefully. Your family may have already filed something you don't know about. Against the deed." Thunder rolled overhead as I stared at the house. My house, according to every legal document I had. Through the streams of rain on my windshield, I could see the porch light, illuminating that cardboard box, its edges already going soft in the downpour. "What kind of filing?" I asked, but Janet was already speaking again. "Come to my office first thing tomorrow. Bring everything you have. And Ms. Callahan, I mean everything." The records office opened at 8 sharp. I'd been sitting in the parking lot since 7:15, watching county workers trudge in with their travel mugs and laptop bags. My own coffee sat, untouched, gone cold hours ago during my sleepless night. You ever have one of those moments where your whole world hangs on what's inside a manila folder? That's what was waiting for me behind those glass doors. Janet met me at the counter, her face carefully neutral. "Do you have your parcel number?" I handed her a sticky note with the digits I'd memorized years ago. She nodded and disappeared into the back, leaving me to drum my fingers on the counter and try not to think about that cardboard box, probably still dissolving on the porch in last night's rain. When she returned, she held a thin packet with transfer stamped across the top in red ink. "You'll want to sit down for this," she said quietly, gesturing to a nearby table. The first page looked normal enough. Standard property transfer form, my parents' names typed neatly in the "to" field. Then I saw the signature line. My signature. Except it wasn't my signature. "Take a look at the loops in the E," Janet suggested, pointing with a pencil. "And the way the N connects." She was right. Someone had tried to copy my writing, but the strokes were hesitant, shaky, like a kid tracing letters through paper. My real signature flows. Years of signing financial documents does that to you. This was an amateur's careful imitation. "When was this filed?" I asked, though I already knew the answer would hurt. 2 days after your original deed transfer." Janet's voice was gentle. "They didn't waste any time." My stomach churned. They'd planned this. While I was buying groceries and planning repairs, they were already working to steal it all back. "What can I do?" The words came out steady, surprising even me. "There has to be a process for contesting a forged document." Janet slid another form across the table. "You have 30 days from when you first discovered the forgery to file a contest, according to the timestamp on your call yesterday." 28 days, I finished, checking my phone's calendar. The deadline glowed back at me. November 12th. Less than a month to prove my own parents had forged my signature. I spent the next 2 hours photographing every page of both deed transfers. Janet made certified copies, her stamp hitting the paper with quiet finality. I spread everything out on a courthouse bench: mortgage payments, bank statements, tax records. 3 years of financial history organized in neat chronological order. The morning light filtering through the courthouse windows suddenly felt dim, like someone had drawn a shade between me and the sun. My hands wouldn't stop trembling as I tried to paperclip documents together. Do you know what it feels like to realize you might lose everything twice? First the money, every spare dollar I'd scraped together for 36 months. And now the house itself, the home I'd grown up in, the property I'd sacrificed to save. I forced myself to stand up, gather my documents, and walk outside. A sharp October wind whipped around the courthouse columns, clearing my head a little. In my car, I pulled out a legal pad and started my list. The list grew, each item a small act of defiance. With every line, my hand steadied a bit more. They thought I'd just walk away, take my box of memories, and disappear. They had no idea how good I was at paperwork, at deadlines, at pushing through until the numbers balanced. I pulled up my phone's calendar again and stared at that red circle around November 12th. 28 days. The clock was already ticking. Janet had slipped me her direct line on a post-it note. "If you see anything else, filed," she'd said. "Call immediately. Don't wait. Every day counts now." I tucked the post-it into my planner, right next to my growing checklist. 28 days to save everything I'd already saved once before. That evening, I parked across the street from my house. Their house? No, my house. The porch light clicked on as I walked up, carrying a manila envelope thick with bank statements. My mother's silhouette appeared behind the door glass before I could knock. "What do you want, Erin?" Her voice was muffled but clear enough. "Just to talk." I held up the envelope. "I brought the payment records. Maybe we can work this out without lawyers. The door opened 6 inches, chain still latched. Dad appeared behind Mom, arms crossed. "There's nothing to work out," he said. "The house is ours, always has been. I have the deed right here." I pulled it from the envelope, along with 3 years of mortgage payments. Every single one. Mom's face tightened. "Oh, those silly papers again. Your brother explained all about that technicality." My brother. Of course. I fought to keep my voice steady. "What exactly did he explain?" "That you tried to trick us," Dad cut in, "using our financial troubles to steal our home. But we fixed it. The forgery." My stomach clenched. "Fixed it how?" They exchanged glances but said nothing. "Look." I tried again. "I have proof of every payment. 36 months of transfers from my account to the mortgage company. Over $200,000 total." I pulled out the bank statements, holding them up to the gap. "This isn't a technicality. This is real money, my money, that saved this house. You owe us that much and more." Dad's voice had that self-righteous tone I remembered from childhood lectures. "After everything we've done for you." "Done for me?" The words caught in my throat. "I gave up vacations, downsized my car, worked overtime, all to keep you from losing this place. And now you're acting like that was some kind of... what? Down payment on being an obedient daughter?" Mom's face softened for just a moment, then hardened again. "You'll understand someday, when you have children. Family does for family. This isn't doing for family," I said. "This is stealing from family." Dad's hand appeared on the door. "I think you should leave now." "Please," I tried one last time. "We can figure this out. Find a mediator. Something besides court." The door closed. The porch light clicked off. I stood there in the dark, clutching my envelope of useless papers, listening to their footsteps retreat inside my house. 3 years of payments, 3 years of sacrifice, all dismissed with a wave and a technicality. Remember, those old motel signs that blink vacancy in red neon? That's where I ended up. The extended stay on Route 23. Room 114 smelled like stale cigarettes masked with lemon cleaner, but it had a table and Wi-Fi. That's all I needed. I spread my files across the scratched formica: deed, bank statements, tax records, contest forms. Dinner was 2 packages of cheese crackers from the vending machine down the hall. The kind Mom used to pack in my school. Lunches, actually. Funny how memories ambush you at the worst moments. The contest notice took an hour to draft. Every word had to be perfect. I booked a notary for 9 a.m. through one of those mobile services. No way I was risking running into my family at the bank. My email to Elaine was shorter. "Need your help. Parents locked me out. Forged transfer docs. 28 days to contest. Can we talk?" I stared at my phone, willing it to buzz. Nothing. The silence felt heavier with each passing minute. The room's single window faced the parking lot. Someone's car alarm chirped in the distance. I could smell lemon oil, not the rich, warm scent that always drifted from our banister at home, but that harsh cleaner trying to cover cigarette smoke. A thought slipped in, dangerous as carbon monoxide. Maybe surrender would be cheaper. Walk away from the house, write off the payments as an expensive lesson in family loyalty. Start fresh somewhere else. The math was simple. I could probably rent a decent apartment for what I'd spent on their mortgage. No more property taxes. No more maintenance. No more... I closed my eyes hard, forcing that poisonous temptation back. This wasn't about money anymore. This was about right and wrong, about truth and lies. The motel's neon clock burned 6:02 into my retinas. I'd barely slept, tossing between scratchy sheets while guilt and exhaustion pressed down like wet concrete. You know that hollow feeling when you're about to do something that can't be undone? That's what sat in my chest, heavy as lead. My laptop hummed on the rickety table, contest notice draft glowing on the screen. The cursor blinked over the submit button, taunting me. One click would start a war. My finger hovered, trembling. Maybe I should just delete it, walk away, keep the peace. The morning sun crept through thin curtains, painting stripes across my stack of records. 3 years of bank statements, 36 months of transfers. Each one represented a choice: skip the vacation, keep the old car, pack lunch instead of buying it. I'd done without so many little things to keep that house in the family. My hands steadied. Peace at the price of justice isn't peace at all. I hit print. The courthouse opened at 8. Was there at 7:50, first in line, manila envelope clutched tight. The clerk's window felt like a confessional, sliding my papers through that little gap, watching her stamp each page with mechanical precision. When she handed back my receipt, the red filed mark looked like an accusation. 30 days from notice to resolve, she reminded me, already turning to the next person in line. Outside, the October sun felt brittle, like it might shatter if you touched it. I sat in my car, staring at my phone. Elaine's number waited at the top of my recent calls. 3 rings. Erin? Her voice was sharp, alert despite the early hour. What's wrong? The whole story spilled out. The lockout, the forged transfer, the ticking clock. My voice cracked once, just a little, when I described seeing my brother through the window. Silence stretched across the line. I heard her exhale, slow and measured. Listen to me carefully, she said. You earned that deed. Every payment, every sacrifice. It's documented, right? Yes. Good. Send me everything. Bank transfers, mortgage statements, your copy of the deed, and that forged signature. I want crystal clear scans, multiple angles. I could hear papers shuffling on her end. What about the lockout? They won't even talk to me anymore. Document that too. Photos of the changed locks, any texts or emails about trying to get in. Start a paper trail now. My hands were already moving, pulling files from my briefcase. I'll scan everything as soon as I get back to the motel. Motel? Extended stay on Route 23, room 114. I tried to laugh, but it came out hollow. Home sweet home for now. Send me the address too. More shuffling. And Erin? Don't delete anything. Every message, every email. Keep it all. Okay. My throat felt tight. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Just get me those documents. The call ended. I sat there watching morning traffic drift past, feeling something shift inside me. Not quite hope, more like the first hint of solid ground after weeks of quicksand. Back at the motel, I spread everything across the bed. The table was too small now. Binders arranged by date, color-coded tabs marking key transfers. My paper bag breakfast, egg sandwich, cooling, coffee, sat forgotten while I scanned and labeled each document. The afternoon sun had shifted to the parking lot side when my phone buzzed. Elaine's name flashed on the screen. My heart jumped as I answered. Hello? Her voice was clipped, urgent. Start a chain of custody now. I met Elaine at Cornerstone Coffee the next morning. The kind of place where they know regulars by name, but leave you alone if you're working. Perfect for spreading out documents without an audience. The familiar scent of roasted beans and warm pastries almost made me forget I was technically homeless. First thing, Elaine said, sliding into the booth with her oversized leather bag. We document everything. And I mean everything. She pulled out a yellow legal pad, covered in her cramped handwriting. How's your filing system? I had to smile. Color-coded by year, chronological within each section. Bank, statements, transfer receipts, property tax records, all separated. That's my girl. She nodded approvingly. You see, Elaine had taught me about paper trails back when I was just starting out. Records beat memory every time, she'd always say. For the next hour, we built what she called our authentication arsenal. 3 thick binders, each numbered and labeled with exhibit tabs. Every mortgage payment, every utility bill, every scrap of proof that I'd been maintaining that house for 3 years. Look at this, Elaine said, holding my notarized deed signature next to the forged transfer. See how the C in Callahan slopes differently, and the loop on the E. She traced the differences with a red pen. Amateur hour. They didn't even try to match your natural flow. The forgery looked childish next to my real signature. I remembered my brother's handwriting from Christmas. Cards, always rushed, always slightly tilted. My stomach turned. "We need bank representatives to verify these transfers," Elaine continued, tapping my payment records. "Get affidavits, multiple ones, show the pattern." I spent that afternoon at 3 different banks, explaining to managers why I needed official statements about my payment history. By sunset, I had notarized affidavits from all of them, confirming every transfer from my account to the mortgage company. Back at the motel, I drafted a settlement email, kept it professional, unemotional. "Title stays with me," I wrote, "but my parents could live there rent-free." I'd maintain the property, handle repairs, even set up a formal agreement about improvements. All they had to do was drop the forged transfer attempt. "See?" I typed. "Everyone wins. No courts, no publicity, just family taking care of family." I hit send at 6:42 p.m. By 7:15, the front desk called. Certified letter waiting. The envelope felt heavy in my hands. Official law firm letterhead peeked through the window. Inside, words jumped out like slaps. Elder exploitation, undue influence, criminal investigation. They were accusing me of forcing my parents to sign over their house, of taking advantage of their trust, of being the kind of person who preys on vulnerable seniors. My pulse hammered so hard I could barely hold my phone to forward the letter to Elaine. The screen blurred as I typed. They're saying I exploited them, that I'm the criminal. The motel room suddenly felt exposed. Every passing car, every shadow under the door made me twitch. Would the police show up? Child Protective Services? I'd worked with enough financial crime cases to know how fast things could spiral. I stood at the window, watching headlights sweep across the parking lot. Each one could be an investigator, coming to question me about taking advantage of my own parents. The neon vacancy sign cast a red glow across my reflection. Tired eyes, shoulders tight with tension. A car door slammed somewhere close by. Footsteps crunched on gravel. My fingers trembled as I pulled the curtain shut. The next morning hit me like a truck. I'd barely slept, spending most of the night rolling through worst-case scenarios. You know how your mind gets at 3 a.m. Everything seems 10 times worse than it actually is. Elaine was already waiting on the courthouse steps when I arrived, looking fresh and focused in her navy blazer. She'd brought her signature leather briefcase, the one I remembered from my earliest days learning the ropes. Just seeing it made me feel a little more grounded. "Ready?" she asked, holding up a stack of papers that looked thick, enough to stop a bullet. "As I'll ever be." I smoothed down my blouse, wishing I'd had time to iron it properly. The extended stay motel's iron wasn't exactly reliable. Inside, the courthouse air conditioning hit us like a wall of Arctic air. The marble floors squeaked under our shoes as we made our way to the clerk's office. Remember those old buildings where every footstep seems to echo? That was this place, all high ceilings and judgment. Elaine spread our documents across an empty counter. "We're filing 2 responses today," she explained, separating the stacks. "First, we're moving to strike that forged transfer. Second, we're shutting down their exploitation nonsense with hard evidence." I watched her hands move efficiently through the papers, tabbing sections with practiced precision. The motion to strike looked like poetry in legal format, every paragraph dismantling the forged document piece by piece. "Look here," she pointed to a section. "We've lined up your authentic signatures against the forgery. Even a first-year law student could spot the difference." The rebuttal to their exploitation claims was even better. 3 years of mortgage receipts, each one methodically organized by date. Bank confirmations showing transfers from my account. And the kicker? Dozens of text messages from my parents, thanking me for the payments. "Remember that group chat where your mom kept sending heart emojis every time you covered the mortgage?" Elaine asked, sliding those printouts into a clear sleeve. "That's gold." I did remember. Each one of those messages had felt like validation at the time. Now they were ammunition. Funny how things change. The clerk called us forward, a woman about my age with reading glasses perched on her nose. She had that seen it all expression that comes from years of watching family disputes play out in paperwork. "Timeline interview," she announced, pulling out a form. "When did you first become aware of the disputed transfer?" I walked her through the dates, my voice steady despite the knot in my stomach. When did I learn about the forgery? The exact day I found my key wouldn't work. When did I file my contest? 28 days before the deadline. "You'll need to sign these declarations," she said, sliding several forms across the counter. "Under penalty of perjury. You understand what that means?" I nodded, remembering every client I'd ever advised about the seriousness of sworn statements. The pen felt heavy as I signed my name, my real signature, the one I'd used for decades. Outside, the noon sun hit like a spotlight. The heat wrapped around us as we descended the courthouse steps, making my collar stick to my neck. Elaine turned to face me. "This is going to a full hearing," she said, "no sugarcoating. They'll fight, and it won't be pretty." For a moment I felt it all crash down, the exhaustion, the betrayal, the sheer weight of fighting my own family. The words, "maybe we should settle," rose in my throat like bile. 3 years of payments suddenly seemed like a small price to pay for peace. But then I remembered my father's dismissive, "You owe us," my mother's cold eyes behind the glass door, my brother's accusations. I took a deep breath of the thick summer air. "We proceed," I said, surprising myself with how firm my voice sounded. That evening, I stood in front of the motel mirror, practicing answers to potential questions. "Yes, Your Honor, I paid every mortgage payment for 3 years. No, Your Honor, they never contributed after the transfer. Yes, Your Honor, I have documentation for everything." The courthouse email arrived at 9:47 p.m. Subject line, "Hearing scheduled." 1 week. We had 1 week to prepare. The next week felt like cramming for the hardest exam of my life. You know those nightmares where you show up unprepared? This was the opposite. I was determined to be ready for anything. Elaine commandeered a conference room at her old firm, turning it into our war room. Every morning I'd arrive with fresh coffee and steeled nerves, ready for another round of mock testimony. "Your parents claim you pressured them into signing the deed," she'd say, pacing like a prosecutor. "How do you respond?" "I have emails showing they requested my help," I'd answer, tapping the relevant exhibit. Plus bank statements proving they'd already missed 3 payments before I stepped in. She'd nod, then hit harder. "Why didn't you just give them the money? Why demand the deed?" "Because throwing money at the problem wouldn't fix their spending habits," I'd reply, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. "The deed protected my investment while giving them security. Remember those old office chairs that squeak when you're nervous?" I spent hours in one, watching Elaine dissect every possible angle of attack. She was relentless, and I was grateful for it. Midweek, I visited First National, where I'd done my banking for 20 years. Sarah, the branch manager, remembered every conversation about those mortgage payments. "Of course I'll sign an affidavit," she said, pulling up my transaction history. "These transfers are clear as day." The records office was next. I served them with a subpoena for the original forged filing, complete with timestamps and intake notes. The clerk, different from the one who'd warned me, just nodded, sympathetically. I guess she'd seen enough family disputes to last a lifetime. Every few days, I'd try reaching out to my parents through their lawyer. "We can still settle this," I'd offer. "You keep living there, I keep the deed. We all save on legal fees." The responses were always the same. Silence. My brother, though? He couldn't resist throwing punches. His text came at 2 a.m. "You're nothing but a thief, always were." I stared at those words in my dark motel room, remembering how he used to beg me for lunch money in high school, how he never paid it back, how he hadn't contributed a dime to saving our parents' house. Delete. That Sunday night, I spread everything across the motel's kitchenette counter. 5 folders, color-coded and labeled: payments, green; deed transfer, blue; forged filing, red; timeline, yellow; and communications, purple. Each one bulging with exhibits, each exhibit tagged and numbered. My hands shook a little as I pulled my charcoal suit from the closet. It still smelled faintly of home, that hint of lemon oil that always drifted up from the banister. I hung it carefully, smoothing every wrinkle. 2 alarms set, 5:30 a.m. and 5:45 a.m. Though honestly, who was I kidding? Sleep wasn't happening. I lay in bed watching shadows crawl across the ceiling, thinking about the house. About Sunday, dinners and Christmas mornings. About the spot in the kitchen where Mom marked our heights in pencil. About Dad teaching me to balance a checkbook at the dining room table. Funny how memories sharpen when you might lose their setting forever. The first alarm was unnecessary. I was already dressed and clutching a styrofoam cup of motel coffee when the sun started painting the sky in shades of purple and orange. From my second-floor window, I watched early morning traffic build on the highway, other people heading to their own battles. Elaine met me at the courthouse steps at 7:45 a.m. The morning air was thick with humidity, promising another scorcher. We waited with other early arrivals, lawyers in suits, clients in their Sunday best, everyone trying not to look nervous. At exactly 8:00 a.m., a security guard unlocked the heavy doors. The familiar blast of cold air hit us as we walked in, our heels clicking on marble. Up the main staircase, past portraits of stern-faced judges, down the hall to courtroom 3. My hand gripped the polished wooden banister, the same one I'd held during that first visit to the records office when this nightmare started. Now here I was, back where it began, but armed with truth this time. We settled into our seats at the plaintiff's table. I arranged our folders in perfect alignment while the room slowly filled. The bailiff moved to the center of the courtroom, clipboard in hand. "All rise," he called out. "Case number 2023 CV 4E891, Callahan versus Callahan." I've sat through hundreds of client meetings, but nothing prepares you for watching your family on the other side of a courtroom. Have you ever felt your whole life compress into a few hours of testimony? Elaine stood, cool as winter frost, and laid out our case like she was teaching Contract Law 101. "Your Honor, the facts are simple. My client made 36 consecutive mortgage payments to prevent foreclosure. She accepted deed transfer as security, all properly notarized and recorded. Then, without notice, she was locked out of her own property and faced with a forged filing. My parents wouldn't look at me. Mom kept adjusting her reading glasses while Dad studied his hands. Their lawyer, some young guy in an off-the-rack suit, shuffled papers like he was searching for gold. "If it pleases the court," Elaine continued, "I'd like the original transfer document brought in, along with a magnifying glass for signature comparison." She held up a clear evidence bag. "We have Ms. Callahan's authentic signature from 5 different notarized documents here." The bailiff returned with both items. I watched the judge lean forward as Elaine placed them side by side under the magnifier connected to a display screen. My real signature flowed across the monitor, the slight upward tilt I'd developed from years of signing financial documents. Next to it, the forgery looked like a child's attempt at copying cursive. "Miss Callahan," Elaine turned to me, "please approach the evidence table." My knees felt liquid as I stood. The witness chair was hard plastic, unforgiving. Elaine walked me through those 3 years, every payment, every bank transfer, the final deed recording. I had the dates memorized, but my voice still shook. "And this signature," she pointed to the forged document. "Did you write this?" "No." The word came out stronger than I expected. "That's not my signature. I never signed anything transferring the property back." "Can you identify the specific differences?" My hands trembled as I pointed to the screen. "My C always loops. Completely. This one's broken. The N at the end is rushed, squared off, and I never dot my I with a circle like that." The young lawyer objected, something about speculation, but the judge waved him off. "The witness is qualified to identify her own signature, counselor." Elaine called the records clerk next. Poor woman looked like she'd rather be anywhere else as she confirmed filing dates and timestamps. But then something interesting happened. The notary seal on the forged transfer was dated 3 days after the document was supposedly filed. You could feel the energy shift in the courtroom. The judge's eyebrows drew together as he studied the dates. Even the bailiff stopped pretending to look bored. "So to be clear," Elaine pressed, "this document claims to have been notarized 3 days after you show it being filed." That's what the timestamps indicate, yes." The clerk's voice had dropped to nearly a whisper. "Impossible," the judge muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. I watched my parents' lawyer scribbling frantically. Mom had taken off her glasses entirely now, and Dad's face had gone the color of old paste. Elaine paused, letting the impossibility of those dates sink in. Then she turned toward the gallery, where my brother sat trying to look invisible. "Your Honor, I'd like to call Michael Callahan to the stand." My brother's head snapped up. He'd worn his best salesman smile into court, but it vanished as Elaine spoke his name. "Mr. Callahan," she said, "would you please explain to the court why you instructed your parents that their daughter's deed was just a technicality? And while you're at it, perhaps you could elaborate on your role in preparing that forged transfer?" The room went so quiet, you could hear the ancient heating system tick in the walls. My brother stood slowly, tugging at his collar. As he made his way to the witness stand, I remembered that Christmas when we were kids, after he'd broken Mom's favorite ornament and tried to blame it on the cat. He had that same cornered look now. I'd seen my brother testify in court before, usually small claims cases when his sales went bad. But this time was different. His right hand trembled as he raised it for the oath. Elaine didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Mr. Callahan, I have here a series of text messages between you and your parents. They were obtained through discovery." She approached with a thick printout. "Would you please read the highlighted portion from April 15th? Mike squinted at the page. His salesman's polish cracked further. I don't remember every text I sent." "Then allow me to refresh your memory." Elaine's voice carried that dangerous softness I recognized from our prep sessions. "Mom, Dad, you need to fix this deed thing. It's just paper. Ignore her fancy documents. The house belongs to all of us." I felt my shoulders tighten. All of us? I'd been the only one making payments for 3 years. "Did you send that message, Mr. Callahan?" "Well, yeah, but..." "And this one? From April 18th? Elaine flipped a page. "She's trying to steal your house. Don't let some financial mumbo-jumbo trick you. We can file our own papers." Mom made a small sound in her throat. I couldn't look at her. "Would you explain to the court what you meant by file our own papers?" Mike's collar was definitely too tight now. "I just meant, protecting their interests." "Their interests?" Elaine's eyebrow arched. "Or yours?" "Objection. Argumentative," the young lawyer jumped in. "I'll rephrase," Elaine said smoothly. "Mr. Callahan, why were you so concerned about the deed transfer?" The silence stretched. I watched my brother's face flush deeper red. "Because..." He swallowed hard. "Because that house was supposed to be mine someday." You could hear a pin drop in that courtroom. "To be clear," Elaine pressed, "you expected to inherit the property?" "Mom and Dad always said..." His voice cracked. "They always said I'd get the house. But then she..." He jabbed a finger my way. "She swooped in with her fancy job and her mortgage payments and stole my future." I felt sick. 3 years of sacrifices, of brown bag lunches and canceled vacations, reduced to swooping in. But what hurt worse was seeing Mom and Dad seem to physically shrink in their chairs. The truth of what their son had orchestrated finally hitting home. The judge's pen scratched against his notepad. His expression could have been carved from granite. "Any further questions?" he asked, voice clipped. "No, Your Honor." Elaine returned to our table. "Redirect?" the judge asked my parents' lawyer. The young man stood, opened his mouth, then slowly sat back down. "No questions, Your Honor." "Very well." The judge straightened his papers. "I believe I've heard enough testimony. Closing arguments?" Elaine rose again, steady as always. "Your Honor, the evidence is clear. My client saved this. home through documented mortgage payments over 3 years. She received clean title through proper channels. When that legitimate deed threatened others' expectations, they responded with forgery and fraud. She gestured to the exhibit screen still showing the impossible filing dates. We ask the court to uphold Ms. Callahan's rightful ownership and impose appropriate sanctions for this egregious conduct. The young lawyer's closing was brief and deflated. Something about family relationships being complex. The judge stacked his files with sharp movements. I will review the evidence and issue judgment after a brief recess. He stood. Court will resume in 30 minutes. The bailiff called, "All rise," and just like that, we were filing into the hallway. I leaned against the wall outside, trying to steady my breathing while Elaine checked messages on her phone. Each second felt like an hour. The institutional clock above the water fountain tick-tick-ticked with maddening precision. My brother slipped past without looking at me, phone already pressed to his ear. Mom and Dad huddled with their lawyer near the restrooms, voices too low to hear. The young man kept shaking his head. 28 minutes left. 27. My future balanced on the edge of a judge's gavel, and all I could do was count seconds. Elaine touched my arm. "Breathe, Aaron. Just breathe." The bailiff's "all rise" jerked me from my daze. 30 minutes had crawled by like 30 years, but now we were filing back in, and my legs felt like rubber. I smoothed my skirt with trembling hands as I sat. You know that moment when you're so scared you can barely breathe? That was me, watching the judge settle into his chair and adjust his reading glasses. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. Having reviewed the evidence presented, I am prepared to issue my ruling. He looked directly at me, then swept his gaze across the courtroom. This case presents a straightforward question of property rights complicated by family dynamics. My heart hammered so loud I worried others could hear it. Elaine's hand found mine under the counsel table. "The facts are clear," the judge continued. Ms. Callahan made mortgage payments for 3 years, documented by extensive bank records. She received legal title through proper channels, evidenced by a valid deed transfer. The subsequent attempt to invalidate her ownership. He paused, jaw tightening. That attempt relied on a forged document submitted to this court. I heard Mom's sharp intake of breath behind me. Such conduct cannot stand. The judge's voice hardened. I find that Ms. Callahan's ownership of the property is valid and shall remain in full force and effect. The purported transfer filing dated April 20th is hereby declared null and void. The relief hit me so hard I actually swayed in my chair. Elaine's grip steadied me. Furthermore, the judge went on, this court finds that the submission of forged documents constitutes fraud upon the court, a serious matter requiring additional consideration. He checked his calendar. We will convene tomorrow at 9 a.m. to address sanctions and penalties. The clerk will prepare the necessary orders. The sharp crack of his gavel made me jump. Court is adjourned. I closed my eyes, feeling tears threaten. The house was mine. Really, truly mine. When I opened them again, the clerk was already stamping papers with practiced efficiency. "Let's get some air," Elaine murmured, gathering our files. I nodded, not trusting my voice. As we walked toward the courthouse steps, I spotted 2 reporters scribbling in notepads. One caught my eye and started forward, but Elaine smoothly steered me toward the side exit. The autumn air hit my face like a blessing. I leaned against the building's cool stone, just breathing. My phone buzzed, a calendar notification for tomorrow's hearing. 9 a.m., Courtroom 3B, Sanctions Hearing, Callahan Property Dispute. "Thank you," I texted Elaine, though she stood right beside me. Sometimes words are easier when they're not spoken. She squeezed my shoulder. "Let's get these exhibits packed up. You'll need your strength for tomorrow." We were loading the last binder into my car when the courthouse speakers crackled to life, announcing the next day's docket. The mechanical voice echoed across the parking lot. 9 a.m., Courtroom 3B, Financial penalties and public record entries in the matter of Callahan versus Callahan. I closed the trunk, each motion deliberate and controlled. One battle won, one more to go. I arrived at the courthouse early, the morning chill matching my mood. 8:45 a.m., just enough time to steady my nerves before the sanctions hearing. You'd think after yesterday's victory, I'd feel lighter. But something in me knew this final chapter would hurt worse than all the rest. The courtroom looked different in the morning light. Dust, motes danced in the sunbeams streaming through tall windows, making everything feel slightly surreal. I took my seat beside Elaine, watching the gallery fill with familiar faces, court reporters, curious attorneys, even a few real estate agents I recognized from my work. My family filed in last, looking smaller somehow. Mom's shoulders were hunched, Dad's steps uncertain. My brother wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. "All rise." The judge entered, precisely at 9, his black robe catching the light. He didn't waste time with preliminaries. Having found fraud upon the court through the submission of forged documents, we now address consequences. He lifted a document. I have reviewed the financial declarations submitted by all parties and considered appropriate sanctions under state law. I forced myself to breathe normally as he continued. First, regarding monetary penalties. He looked directly at my parents and brother. This court assesses sanctions of $45,000, representing treble damages for Ms. Callahan's legal fees and costs. He paused as a murmur rippled through the gallery. Additionally, statutory penalties for filing fraudulent documents total $15,000. My mother's gasp cut through the silence. That was most of their retirement savings. I knew because I'd helped manage their accounts for years. Payment shall be made within 30 days, the judge continued, or pursuant to the payment plan outlined in Appendix A, secured by liens on all non-exempt assets. He gestured to the clerk, who began stamping documents. Second, regarding public record. The judge's voice hardened. The court's findings of fraud shall be recorded with the county recorder's office and attached to all relevant property records. Additionally, a notice of this ruling will be published in accordance with local rules. I watched my brother flinch. In our small business community, this kind of public mark would follow him for years. The clerk will process these entries immediately. The judge gathered his papers. This concludes our hearing. Ms. Callahan, please see the clerk for final paperwork. The sharp crack of his gavel echoed finality. I signed where indicated, my signature steady. Now, no tremors, no hesitation. Each stroke of the pen felt like closing a door on 3 years of betrayal. The drive home was a blur of autumn colors and quiet streets. When I pulled into the driveway, my driveway, the house looked exactly the same. Funny how landmarks of personal earthquakes never show the damage on the outside. My key slid into the lock smoothly. The door opened on silence and stale air. I moved through the rooms, opening windows to let in the crisp October breeze. The familiar scent of lemon oil furniture polish still clung to the woodwork, a ghost of Sunday afternoons spent cleaning with Mom. Amazing how something so comforting could turn bittersweet so fast. The sunlight caught the dust, reminding me of the courtroom this morning. I ran my hand along the banister, feeling every groove and dent I'd memorized since childhood. Each one had a story, most of them happy once upon a time. From my bag, I pulled out a small pot containing a single orchid, its white petals pristine against dark leaves. I'd chosen it carefully. Orchids need the right balance of care and space to thrive. Too much attention suffocates them. Too little leaves them withering. I placed it on the windowsill where the afternoon light would warm its leaves. The petals glowed almost translucent in the sun, like something new and clean and honest. Standing in the entry hall, surrounded by echoes of what was and whispers of what could be, I touched the banister one more time and spoke the truth I'd learned at such cost. Family loyalty means nothing without respect. The orchid's petals caught the light, transforming it into something that looked remarkably like hope.